Welcome to CanHack 2021 Web Security 201. And first of all, I want to start off by wishing all of you a very happy new year. I hope you guys had a great time over the holidays and you had some time to enjoy yourselves and get to spend time with your family and loved ones. So welcome back to CanHack. I have some important announcements to make. So you might have heard with everything going on with COVID, we'd like to tell you that we are proceeding with CanHack as planned. It will be all virtual across all provinces, and the competition is open to all high school students across Canada. So we're going to be proceeding as planned, and it will be all virtual for this year, for 2021. The registration for the PICO CTF platform will open up in mid-February, and your supervisors, teachers, or your parents, guardians who signed you up will be getting the confirmation email. So make sure that they follow up with you about that. There's an important announcement about the Piazza platform. We will not be using the Piazza platform any longer, as mentioned last year as well. So in the interim, we're working on a solution, and we will send you an updated email with some updates about that. Just an important announcement for teachers, supervisors, parents, guardians. We are continuing with the office hours this semester as well. So they take place 7 p.m. on Tuesdays from 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Thursday, they happen from 12:30 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays and Tuesdays. So you should all have calendar invites by now. So make sure that if you have any questions, to please come to the office hours. Any concerns, come to the office hours and we can address those there. As well, we will have an exciting announcement to make. So we have to promote CanHack more and to promote the interest for the students in the cybersecurity industry and to provide them with an incentive for all of their hard work that they have done for CanHack. We are coming up with the digital badge. So what this badge will do is it's going to be like a digital badge that you will receive digitally. And it's basically going to be upon successful completion of a quiz that we have prepared. The quiz will help you prepare for the competition, and then successfully, once you completed the quiz and you participate in the competition, regardless of the score, you will receive that digital badge. And basically, this digital badge is going to be a great addition to your resume, to your portfolio. It's going to look great on applications for colleges, universities. It's going to look great on applications for internships, on applications for co-ops, on applications for any other extracurricular activities in the cybersecurity industry especially. There are a lot of badges, and for cybersecurity jobs, internships, they really value those badges. I myself have a few badges, and you know, like recruiters, people that want to work with you, they love to see those badges because that badge really signifies your interest, your participation, and it's going to be really cool. So we're going to be following up with an email soon about the badge and all of the full details. I also want to share with you I wanted to share with you this YouTube channel that has all of the problems for PICO CTF. So we're going to go PICO CTF 2019 solutions. And let's see if I can find that prof. This is his channel. His name, this is the professor. He's with the Carnegie Mellon University, and he has provided the solutions to all of the PICO CTF 2019 problems. So if you're ever stuck, you can, and you've attempted the problem multiple times, he walks through all of the solutions. So these solutions are here. So if you're ever stuck, please feel free to check out the solutions on this YouTube page. This YouTube channel has all of the solutions. Another thing I wanted to share with you guys was this PICO primer. I've highlighted this in all of the workshops prior, but it's really important to go through this PICO primer and be familiar with everything that's talked about here before attempting the challenges, because they give you like a primer of all the knowledge and of all the things you should know before attempting the challenges. So this is really important to go through this primer before attempting the challenges. So you could go through each of the sections little at a time, just at your own pace, whatever you're comfortable doing. So it's really important to go through this. So those are all the announcements I have. So let's get started with web security. Today, we have Abira, who's also going to be joining us, and she's going to be there to answer on any of the questions that you might have. Just feel free to type them in the chat box, and she will be there to answer all the questions that you might have. So let's get started with CanHack 2021 Web Security. So what is web security? And we talked about this last time that we covered Web Security 101. Web security is securing and protecting websites and web applications against cyber attacks. And many times, these cyber attacks on websites and web applications take place due to, unsafe coding practices or unsecure coding practices. So it's really important to protect your web applications and websites using secure coding practices and ensuring that there are no vulnerabilities in the code that can be exploited by attackers or malicious hackers. And majority of the CTF challenges in this category will provide you with the web page to inspect or exploit in some way. If you've gone through the challenges, you've probably seen that almost all of them have a web page associated with the web security challenges. So let's do a little recap of what we covered in Web Security 101. We talked about some general skills that it's important to have, and these general skills were command line Linux skills. So we talked about ls, we talked about the cat command, we talked about the grep command, we just talked about some commands. It's going to be really important that you're comfortable using command line and comfortable with using Linux command line specifically, because that's what they use in the shell that they provide to you for the competition. So whether you're using the Pico CTF shell or whether you're using your own virtual machine or virtual box, it's really important to have a good grasp of some of the basic commands in Linux. We talked about what is web security, and we just reviewed that. We took a look at how websites are formed. So we looked at the HTML, the CSS, and some of the JavaScript. We talked about developer tools, which is really important to use to inspect the source code, inspect elements, and to see what's really happening in the back end of the pages. We talked about the HTTP protocol, which allows us to get information from websites, which allows us to go to these websites. And we talked about code injection attacks, which are cross-site scripting attacks and SQL injection attacks. We're going to be building upon our knowledge of SQL injection attacks from last time in this workshop. So today our agenda is short, but we're going to cover a lot of exciting things. We're going to talk about web authentication. We're going to talk about password cracking, and we're going to do some password cracking as well. And we're going to talk about SQL injection. So what is web authentication? Well, web authentication allows users to verify their identities in order to gain access to their personal accounts on a website. For example, when you're trying to log into, let's say, your bank's webpage, the bank needs to really be sure that it's actually you who is logging into the webpage. And once you have logged in and authenticated yourself, you don't want to be having to authenticate each time that you need to go to a different page. For example, when I first log onto my webpage, my bank webpage, I'm going to go and look at the account summary. Then let's say I want to go into my checkings account and see all the balance that's there. If they were to ask me to re-authenticate to prove who I really am, it would be really frustrating for me as a user, and it wouldn't be maintaining the state. And we talked about how cookies help us maintain that state because HTTP is a stateless protocol. So there's two common ways that the web applications authenticate users. One is called cookie-based authentication, and the other is called token-based authentication. So in cookie-based authentication, what happens is when you log in, you're going to provide your username and password, and the web application is going to go to their database and make sure that that username and password matches with what they have in their database. And when that happens, they're going to create a session for you. And when they create that session for you, the session is assigned an ID, which is stored in a cookie on the user's browser. So when I log into the bank with my username and password, I've authenticated and they've made sure that it's actually me. And these days there's, multi-factor authentication where you might get a text message. You might have to open up an authenticator app to prove that it's really you, to go through that extra step. And once I've done all of that, it's going to assign me a session ID, which is then going to be stored in my browser temporarily. And then with every request that I make to the page, like let's say I've logged in, now I want to go to the checking page, that session ID is going to be sent in the cookie to allow me to continue browsing without having to keep re-authenticating. And every time the request is made, the server is going to compare the session ID with the session info that they have stored on the server. So they're going to see, okay, this person who's being authenticated, this is their session ID for this session. Does this match with what their browser cookie has provided? And if it does, then you're going to have no problem continuing to browse. After a period of inactivity, these session IDs do expire, and you're going to be asked to re-authenticate for your security purposes to make sure that no malicious hacker gets into your account during that time. So on this side, the server is doing the authentication by checking that session ID. And this is cookie-based authentication because you're sending the session ID in a cookie. In token-based authentication, we have many different ways we can do token-based. The most popular, one of the most popular is called JSON Web Tokens, or JWT, when abbreviated. So JWT stands for JSON Web Tokens. There's also OpenID, OAuth, but we're going to be talking about JSON Web Tokens for this particular workshop. So what happens with JSON Web Tokens is a user signs in with their username and password, and the same way that it gets authenticated with a database to make sure that it's really you. Then the server creates a JWT token using a secret key. So now there's more security because now it's just not an empty session ID. Now there's a secret key. So if anybody wanted to change that, they'd have to know the secret key. And then they send it back to the user's browser where it's stored. Another thing token-based helps with is a lot of times for people's security and privacy, they disable cookies. So when cookies are disabled, it's really hard to do cookie-based authentication because that relies on the cookie, where token-based does not rely on cookies. What happens is that it's stored in the user's browser, and then with every request, the JWT token is sent in the HTTP header back to the website. It's validated by the server, and a response is sent back. The token is cleared from the user's browser when they log out. So this token allows us to, we don't have to use cookies, and it's more secure because there's now a secret key assigned with it. So now that we've talked about that, let's attempt one of the problems in PicoCTF 2019 called JWT scratchpad. I am just going to go into and open up my Kali Linux machine. So I recommend that you guys download Kali Linux because it's going to have a lot of the tools already that come pre-installed, so you won't have to download additional tools. When you download Kali Linux, all the tools will already be there. So that will save you a lot of trouble of having to, keep downloading additional tools. So here we are in my Linux machine, and I'm going to introduce you to two different tools right now. One of them is called Burp Suite, and it comes pre-installed with Kali Linux. Burp Suite is a proxy tool, and it allows you to view and modify HTTP requests. So a lot of the problems we did in Web Security 101 workshop, where we were modifying cookies and we were modifying particular things in the way we were sending the requests, we can do this all in Burp Suite. So you definitely don't have to use this, but it's definitely a really great tool to be familiar with. I'm not sure why there are two burps open. Yes. Okay, so this is the burp that's open. And we want to go into the proxy section, and we want to make sure that intercept is off. Then we want to open and you don't have to do this. This is just optional. I just wanted to introduce you guys to a super cool tool. You don't have to do this. You can do this through directly everything in your browser. So once we have our Burp Suite open, we're going to navigate to the challenges. And we're going to do the challenge, which is called JWT scratchpad in web exploitation. Let's see if we can find that. Okay, so it's right here. So it says check the admin scratchpad. Let's see what hints. What is that cookie, and have you heard of JWT? So this is our biggest hint, is that it will have to do something with JWT tokens. So let's go to this link right here. Copy, paste that into here. Okay, so we are on this scratchpad now. JWT is an online scratchpad where you can jot down whatever you'd like. Consider it a notebook for your thoughts. JWT works best in Google Chrome for some reason. I tried using it in Firefox and it works fine for me, but if it doesn't work for you, you can always also do this in Google Chrome. You will need to log in to access the Jot scratchpad. You can use any name other than admin because the user gets a special scratchpad. Okay, so we won't use admin. Register with your name. You can use your name as a login because that's quick and easy to remember. If you don't like your name, use a short and cool one like John. Okay, let's just use John. And John is hyperlinked, so let's see what is it hyperlinked to. Okay, so it's hyperlinked to John the Ripper. John the Ripper is a password cracker. So this tells me that there might have to be something that needs to be cracked. So in this problem, they give a lot of hints with the links. And then right here, there's also another hyperlink where it says powered by JWT, JSON Web Tokens. So this is the official web page for JSON Web Tokens. And right here, there's a debugger where we can paste a JSON Web Token and it'll tell us what it is decoded. So this is pretty cool. So we can see that a JSON Web Token has 3 parts: header, payload, and a signature. It's pretty cool. So now let's see what happens when we log in as John, like they recommended. John, okay, I'm gonna hit enter. So it says, welcome to Jot. Hello, John, here is your scratchpad. So it told me and in the hints to look at the cookie data and to look at, so I have a feeling that there might be something in the HTTP header. So let's analyze the HTTP request that was sent. And I'm going to do that using Burp Suite. And in our HTTP history, here we have all of the requests that were made. This post request was when I submitted my John user, and this is what was returned to me. And as you can see right here, we have our JWT token right here. It says Jot. So it has given me the token. So I'm going to copy this token. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go back into Firefox. And this pop-up goes away. Go back into Firefox. And I am going to paste that token right here and see what happens. Delete that, paste that right here. Okay, so we have, this is a Jot token, and that's confirmed. We're using this SHA-256 algorithm right here. There's other algorithms, and you might have a token and it might not be working with this algorithm, and you could see if it works with other algorithms. If you change that, it will change everything. So I recommend you just keep to the algorithm that it's supposed to be. So this is going to be SHA-256 as the algorithm. And you remember we talked about the different encryption algorithms in the Cryptography 101 class. So right here, we're missing a 256-bit key. So to me, it seems like we need to crack this key, and we can by cracking this, we can find out what the key is. So now we're going to use John the Ripper, which it suggested for us to use John the Ripper. So we're going to use John the Ripper. I'm going to open up the terminal. And if you're ever confused about how to use the tool, I'm just going to type John, and it's going to tell me exactly how to use it. So right here, as you can see, it's telling me I'm going to type John. I'm going to provide the options in my password file. So these are the different modes that you can use. We're going to be using something called word list mode. And what happens in word list mode is we're going to provide a word list to it that has pre-compiled passwords, and it's going to go through all of those passwords and see if any of them match. So we're going to use word list mode because brute force, it's going to go through all the combinations that are possible, might take some time. And we're going to specify a format, which is going to be our SHA-256. So I have already, I'm going to show you, I already pasted the token into a text file right here. So that's what I'm going to be cracking. I also want to show you cat rockyou.txt. This is a word list that I'm going to be using. As you can see, there's so many passwords. I think this has more than like 14,000 or some crazy number of passwords. I'm going to stop that. Oops, I don't know why that's not stopping. So let's just exit out of that terminal. So anyways, you saw there's a lot of passwords in that. So to get that word list, all you have to do is Google rockyou.txt, and that word list will be there for you. So now let's let's hit John again and see the options. Let's try cracking that JOT file using the rockyou.txt word list. So to crack the password, we're going to need higher privileges to use the program John. So I'm going to do sudo john.txt. That's the file we want to crack. And the options, we're going to do word list is equal to rockyou.txt. That's the word list. We're specifying the word list. Format is equal to .256. And that's the format. And if you're confused about exactly how these works, and if you Google it, you'll be able to see all the different types of formats, and you can even use --list equal formats and subformats to see exactly what to use. We know we were using HS256, which is SHA-256. So let's hit enter, and we should be able to crack the secret key. It's going to ask me the sudo password for my user. And now it's cracking the password. So let's see how long it takes. Okay, it didn't take very long at all. It took a few seconds, and here is our password right here. It is I love Pico. You can also do john.txt once you've cracked the password and hit show, and it will show you, supposed to show you the passwords that were cracked, and there it is, I love Pico. So now we know that that's our key. Let's go back into Firefox and put that into right here. I love Pico. But our user is still John, so let's see if we can modify that user to be admin. So now we have the admin user and we have the secret key. Let's copy and paste that. And let's send that request back. Let me go back. So we're going to send that request back to this page as admin using Burp Suite. That's what we're going to do. So let's go back into Burp Suite. Let's go down to where the problem was, right here. And so to modify the request, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to hit on this, and you're going to have to say send to repeater. It comes into repeater, and repeater allows you to modify this value. So we're going to paste the new value of the token, and then we're going to hit send, and we should be able to see the web page right here. And I'm scrolling through the web page, and I see the flag right here. Here's our flag. Pico CTF, JOT was just what you thought. So that was a little bit of a challenging problem, but they gave us a lot of hints. They told us exactly what tools to use. We just had to change the user to admin and crack the secret key. And once we were able to crack the secret key, we were able to use that modified JOT token and send it back to the web page in a request and get our CTF right here. Another way you could do this if you're not comfortable using Burp Suite is in Firefox. Not in Firefox, you would have to use Chrome, and you could have used a cookie editing tool, a cookie editor, and then fed that token through that platform. And to see, if you want to see these tokens without actually using Burp Suite, one of the ways is to use a web developer and to use Web Console and storage. And right over here, we have the JOT token. It tells us right here is the JOT token, and you could have copied and pasted it right here. So if you don't want to use Burp Suite, you can also use developer tools to solve this challenge. So let's go back to our presentation. So as seen from that problem, it's really important to have strong passwords, because you saw that that key I love Pico was very short, and it took a few seconds to crack it. And we're going to talk now more about password cracking softwares and why organizations use them to test the security of their users' accounts. A disclaimer before we talk about these password cracking tools, that it's really important that these tools only be used on accounts, on networks, on systems, web pages that you have the permission, explicit permission to do so. In Pico CTF, in that challenge, we had permission. They asked us to use John to crack the key. If you don't have permission to use these tools on a website or a system or network, it's going to be highly illegal. So please use these, and remember to have the code of ethics in mind when using tools like these. So what is password cracking? There's two types of password cracking. There's online password cracking and there's offline password cracking. Online password cracking are live attempts to gain access into a system, network, or a website. So it's when a lot of times where your malicious attackers are sitting there and they're just typing in guessing random passwords. They could be doing, let's say my username is tech and they could be like tech and then the password could be ABC123 and they're going to try different attempts until they crack my password. But there's tools that make that easier. Like it would take a long time for an attacker to sit there and go through all the passwords. That's why there's tools now like John the Ripper, which do all of that work for you, but it's not intended to be for malicious intent. It's intended to be for testing password strength and seeing how easily or how fast they could be cracked. And if they're cracked very fast, that's an indication that we need a stronger password. The problem with online password cracking for attackers is that it's discovered by firewalls and those attempts can be blocked. There's account lockouts now. So if you keep trying too many passwords, they'll lock you out of your account. So then there's what's known as offline password cracking. It's done offline, so you're not going into any system live or getting access into it live or sitting there and, like typing in the passwords live. But what you need to have is a hash. So as you remember from our cryptography workshop, passwords are stored in databases as hash values. They're not stored in clear text because that would be very unsafe. So when an attacker gets a hold of these hashes, they can try cracking them. And this is very convenient. Offline password cracking is very convenient for the malicious hackers as it's invisible to security teams and account lockouts won't be a problem because there's no live hacking involved. So here's some of the 3 most popular password cracking tools. We have John the Ripper. John the Ripper is an open source password security auditing and password recovery tool for many operating systems. And as you saw with that demo, it took a few seconds to crack that secret key. So this is also a lesson for us. If you have passwords that are 8 to 10 characters, they're going to be cracked within seconds by anyone. I'm not using a very, very powerful computer, and it took me like just a few seconds to crack that. So anyone with the laptop can crack those types of passwords. So it's really important to strengthen your passwords and have at least 20-character passwords, if not more. We also have Hashcat. Hashcat's the world's fastest and most advanced password recovery utility, supporting 5 unique modes of attack for over 200 highly optimized hashing algorithms. So my suggestion to you guys to get practice with this is you saw me use John the Ripper to crack the JOT token. I highly encourage you guys to try using Hashcat, which also comes pre-installed on Kali Linux. So you won't have to do any hard work of downloading new software. So please do download Kali Linux onto a VirtualBox or VMware machine, and then try using Hashcat to crack that JOT token instead of John the Ripper. The verbiage is very similar, like the commands are very similar. You would specify a word list. You would specify what word list you want to use. You can use rocku.txt, and then you would specify a format. For Hashcat, the formats are specified by numbers, and the number for that, I'll even give that number to you, is going to be 16500. That's the mode that you're going to want to use to crack the JOT token. So try using Hashcat. I highly encourage you to try using Hashcat. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you'll get a lot of good practice in. Now, Hydra is a parallelized password cracker which supports numerous protocols to attack. So HTTP, HTTPS, SMTP, FTP, just as an example. This tool makes it possible for research and security consultants to see how easy it would be to gain unauthorized access to a system remotely. So with Hydra, you can crack passwords. You can do live password cracking. So my hint to you guys, if you guys do get far into the challenge, is to try using Hydra for Serial Hacker 1. It's going to require you to do some password cracking in that challenge. So try using Hydra for that challenge. And try using a list of the most commonly used usernames and passwords, and then use Hydra along with it. So that was a lot of information that we uncovered. And just again, to remind you guys that when you're using password crackers to use them with a lot of caution. And to solve these challenges, you will need to use an external tool. You will need to use John the Ripper. So it's not possible to solve this problem just by using the shell that they provided. So that's why I highly recommend downloading Kali Linux, because it comes pre-installed with all of the tools we've talked about, from Wireshark, Netcat, Hydra, Hashcat, John the Ripper, Burp Suite. It comes pre-installed with all of those tools. It's going to really help you succeed when you guys are playing the Pico CTF challenge, because all your tools will be right there. I'm just gonna pause right here to see if anyone has any questions. And if not, then we're gonna move forward with the next topic, which is going to be SQL injection. So if no one has any questions, then let's move past to SQL. Are you able to complete the challenge if you can't download software to your computer? Some of my students have school devices that are restricted. You can complete this challenge now because I've cracked the key for you. So if you're not able to do the password cracking, which is what will require you to download the John the Ripper software, you can just use the key, which is I love Pico, and then attempt the challenge after. But then in the CanHack 2021, there might be challenges that also require you to use John the Ripper or Hashcat, and you will not be able to solve them without downloading software to your computer. The only thing I can recommend is that students try using their personal devices, and to make things easier, if they can download VirtualBox or VMware and download Kali Linux. Yeah, John the Ripper comes with Kali Linux. So Kali Linux comes pre-installed with all of these tools that we've been talking about. It comes with Burp Suite, John the Ripper, Hashcat, like all the tools that we've used so far, Wireshark. They all come pre-installed with Kali Linux, so you won't have to each time download a new software, a new tool. It'll just all be there for you, and you can use it. You can use that in VirtualBox. So, like I said again, if the students don't have are not able to download the software, then they can attempt some of the other challenges, but they will not be able to solve challenges that require them to download additional softwares or tools, because these challenges cannot be solved using browser only. So let's move on to SQL injection. So last time we talked about SQL injection, so let's do a little recap of what SQL is. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's a programming language that is used to communicate with databases. It's used to retrieve, put, update, or delete data from a table, and it uses a select statement to retrieve information from a database. So web applications need SQL to communicate with databases. For example, when I logged into my bank account and I put in my username and password, that website would need to communicate with the database to see if that username and password matches with what they have in their database to authenticate me. And most of the time they're using SQL to communicate with that database. And so what would happen is the website would send a query using SQL to the database. And when you exploit those queries, and if you're able to manipulate them, that's when SQL injection takes place. So as described, so SQL injection is a code injection attack that takes advantage of how a server interacts with the database server. In a SQL injection attack, the query is manipulated to make it do something it's not supposed to do, which results in access to data, bypassing authentication, changing data. There's a lot of things that can be done with SQL injection. It's also one of the most powerful and most dangerous attacks. It's also listed as OWASP top 10, web application attacks that take place. If you want to learn more about SQL, more advanced stuff, you can check out OWASP.org. There's a lot of great write-ups, cheat sheets, and explanations about SQL injection there. So, as mentioned, usually there's a web application that's communicating with a database to get information. So, for example, let's say that I'm trying to log into my bank account with my username and password, And when I log in, the website needs to communicate with the server, the database, which holds all of the usernames and passwords. So what it's going to do is it's going to send this query to the database. It's going to say, select all from users where username is equal to the username that I provided. And let's just say that my username is username and that my password is password. It's going to go down the database and see where is username, and where is the password. And it finds a match and it matches how it should. It's going to authenticate me, send it back. But now an attacker can manipulate that query and make it do something it's not supposed to do. This is the most common example that's given when we talk about SQL injections, and that's making this query turn true so that we don't even have to provide a password. Let's take a look at an example. Select all from where username is equal to username and password is equal to, we have double quotes here, like you leave the password blank and you'll put or 1 is equal to 1. And because 1 is always equal to 1, this query will equal true and will allow us to override and bypass authentication. And let's demonstrate that using a simple problem. Practice. And we did this problem last time, but I want to demonstrate it again. It's called Irish name repo 1. Let's go to this link right here. And just as a recap, when we were solving this problem, when we went into support, it said, I keep getting something called a SQL error. That's how we knew that this might be, we might be able to attack it with SQL injection. So let's put it doesn't matter what username we put, let's put username. And for password, let's copy this part right here, copy that, and let's paste that right here. And there we go, we get our flag. So we were able to bypass that state. We were able to manipulate that statement to allow us to bypass that login. So now that we've seen, that is one of the most popular techniques of bypassing login, but there's more techniques as well. What happens is, let's take a look at how SQL language works so that you can craft multiple queries and you can get really creative with generating and crafting these queries. So here's some of the most common SQL commands. Select extracts data from a database. Update updates data in a database. Delete, you can delete data from a database. Insert into, you can insert new data into a database. Drop table, you can delete a whole table. You see these commands are very dangerous because an attacker can just delete the entire database if they want to. If they just have malicious intent, they can delete the entire database. They can insert new data, so they can add themselves as a, let's say, a root user with higher privileges into the database. There's so much that can be done. And if you really want a good understanding of how this SQL language works, I highly recommend you to visit w3schools.com. They have really great breakdown of all of these commands and how to really craft good SQL queries. Let's look at the SQL select statement that we already talked about. So what the select statement does is it selects data from the database. So what a select statement will look like is it will say select a column from the table name. As an example, this is a table we have here. So we could craft a query to say select ID from table 1. And what happens here is that it's going to select IDs. So it's going to say 1, 2 as the results because we're selecting ID from table 1. If you want to select all values in the table, you're going to put an asterisk sign. So you're going to say select asterisk from table 1, which means select all from table 1. What would happen is it would select IDs, usernames, and passwords and present them to us. Now, let's say we only want to specify what exactly we want to select. Let's say we only want to select ID 1. We only want to select this information. So we would say select all from table where ID is equal to 1. So we'd select this query right here. Let's say we want to select where username is equal to user 1. So select all from table 1 where username is equal to user 1. Strings are usually put in quotes, and if it's a number, then you don't have to put quotes around it in SQL statements. Let's look at a union statement. So union statements are used to combine 2 or more select statements. So if I wanted to select multiple things from this table and this table, I could use a union statement. What I could do is select from table 1, select username. From table 1, union means also select username from table 2. And this would give me all the usernames from table 1 and table 2, user 1, user 2, user 134, user 256. I didn't have room here, so I left that last user, but it would also select that. You could select ID from table 1, union select ID from table 2. It select all the IDs, and you get the idea. And this is SQL string concatenation. What this does, it concatenates the strings, the statements, sorry. So that is represented by double pipes, and it also represents logical OR. So let's say, for example, select username, and we put these double pipes, which means concatenate it with a comma, concatenate password from table 1, and the result of that would be user 1, comma, and then the password for user 1, because it's concatenating the statements and putting it together. All of these SQL commands that we are talking about will be helpful when solving the challenge that we're going to do next. And then other SQL injection techniques include commenting out the rest of the statement to bypass login. For example, these are common ways to comment out the statement. So double dash, a pound sign, a number sign, and a slash asterisk. So just as an example for username, we could put something like this, we could put this, and we could put this. And what would happen, the statement would now look like select all from members where username is equal to admin as an example. And because of these two dashes, it would just comment out the rest of the statement. So it wouldn't even need to ask us for a password. Let me just give you guys an example. So let's just use this right here to solve the same problem that we were just at. Let's just put that right here. Just as an example, I just want to show you and see you get the flag too. So I just wanted to show that to you guys because it's really important that in SQL injection and all these other challenges, there are multiple ways to arrive at a solution. So for SQL injection, you can get really creative with the queries you craft. There's going to be multiple ways to craft a query that allows you to bypass that login screen that's going to be the challenge. So it's really important to get creative and not to give up, because there might be, you might think that there's one way to do it, but there might be a different way to do it. So don't give up when doing these problems. Okay, so right here, I'm gonna show you how to solve a problem from 2020, the mini 2020 Pico competition. It's called Web Gauntlet, and we're gonna take a look at it together. So let's open that, and let's also open that. So what's happening here is this is the login screen that it's asking me to bypass. And here are filters. So it's saying it's not allowing me to use the term or. So last time when I was doing or 1 is equal to 1, I won't be able to use that technique. But nothing else is a filter, so I can use other things. So does anybody have an idea of how I could bypass this login page? Does anyone have any ideas? You could type them in the chat box, and we could try some different SQL queries out. Okay, let's try the admin. Let's try admin as suggested. So let's just try that. There's no or in here. And we could put whatever we want for password. It doesn't matter because it's going to get commented out, right? And that works. So good job, that worked. And here, right here behind me, you could see what the SQL query was doing. So as you could see right here, basically it just commented out the rest of the statement. So whatever was after right here, it became irrelevant. So good job. So now let's look at what filters we have for this round. Okay, so we can't use double dash anymore. We can't use or and like. We can't use an equal sign, and we can't use a double dash either. So does anybody have any other ideas of what we can use for this round? They've taken away the dashes we were using, unfortunately. So is there something else we can use? And we can't use or either, so we can't do the 1 is equal to 1. Yeah, let's try the hashtag. Let's try the hashtag. and we just can give it a random password. And that worked, so good job. So as you can see again, let's ignore that. It commented out after this hashtag, it doesn't care what's there because it commented the rest of it out. So now let's look at this. So now we can't use or and equals like these, I forget what these are called, and double dashes. So does anyone have any suggestions as to what we can use? Yeah, that's right. It doesn't show us the hashtag, so we could still technically use the hashtag. So let's still use the hashtag, and we can put whatever we want for password. Okay, and that works. So now let's see what the filter is. Yeah, we could have also used the slash and asterisk. It would have worked. I did try using that as well. So now we can't use the term admin anymore. We can't use two dashes. We can't use like, equal, and or. And this is where I'm going to leave you guys with the challenge. We did 3 rounds together, and I want you guys to try this challenge on your own. Get creative and craft some SQL queries and try getting through round 4 and 5. And I've provided, if you get stuck, I've provided a video that you can watch that explains the solution. But I tried multiple different queries, and there's so many different solutions to it. So before you give up, try getting creative and try crafting the queries. And then if you really are stuck, then watch that video that I provided in the resources. You can also watch this professor's video. He did a new video right here, but that's not the video I suggested. I suggested another one. But you can also, I haven't seen this one, so he might have done the challenges in a different way. You can definitely check these out as well. Let's go back to SQL injection. So yeah, so we saw some ways to bypass login. So now, what are ways that companies can mitigate against SQL injection? They can use parameterized queries, which means that whatever input that a user puts in does not get used, does not get taken and executed. It should get treated as a string. So even if they're putting or password is equal to 1 is equal to 1, it shouldn't execute that. It should just treat that like string data, like meaningless string. So it's really important to do that. It's really important to do input validation. So, to filter out characters, like users are not allowed to use the quotes, or they're not allowed to use the hashtags. They're not allowed to use, you could specify different symbols they're not allowed to use. And a lot of times when you're creating passwords, you might see that you're not allowed to use certain characters. And if you see that, it's because those websites are probably trying to mitigate against cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and other types of code injection attacks. You can also use a web application firewall, which is really powerful, which will be able to detect any sort of malicious activity, block it, put it in the log, and so on and so forth. So here's a summary of the learnings. We had a shorter workshop today, and I know even in the shorter workshop, there was a lot of information to take in. So it's really important to practice both the challenges that we talked about today and attempt some of the other ones. A lot of challenges use SQL injection, so it's really important to get comfortable with crafting SQL queries. So we talked about web authentication, cookie-based and token-based, and we talked about JOT tokens. JOT tokens came up in 2018 PICO CTF and also 2019. So there's a strong chance they might again be a problem on JOT tokens in 2020. They are one of the more challenging challenges, so there are more points allocated with it. So if you can try out this question, then it will be really great because, and it'll also help you to get familiar with the password cracking tools we talked about, such as John the Ripper, Hashcat, and Hydra. And also it's really important to remember to, when using these password cracking tools, make sure you have permission to do so where you're using them. And then we talked about advanced SQL injection. We talked about some ways to bypass filters and, craft SQL queries. So here's some resources to enhance your learning and skills. They will be available on the Resource Hub after this workshop, and the recording of the workshop will also be available. So here's some resources. Here's a good way to understand SQL and how to craft queries. Here's some more SQL injection practice. And this website, I love the way they walk you through everything. So make sure before trying the web gauntlet problem, if you're still a little bit weak on the crafting queries, try this SQL injection practice here. This was also a resource on the, yeah, I can send them in the chat. This was also a resource from where, the 101 workshops. So let me send it to all attendees. So here's all the links. And so that's in practice. I encourage you to do that. Here's the solution for the web gauntlet. Right here is by Cyber Mentor. He explains things really well. So I love the solution that they provided. And JOT tokens, this is a great video to understand and deepen your understanding of JOT tokens. And once again, it's really important to make sure to not be discouraged by these problems. They're capture the flag challenges. They are meant to be challenging, and they're meant to challenge you and have you think outside the box, all the meanwhile building your cybersecurity and ethical hacking skills. One of the teachers or supervisor or parent has suggested that they get their students to use Try Hack Me, which is kind of like a hack the box. It's kind of like a challenge, and it gives you a web-based Kali machine, 1 hour free per day. So let me just paste that right here. So thank you so much for sharing that. So anyone that cannot download those tools, you can try using the Kali machine on this resource for 1 hour per day free. So that is it for today's workshop. Thank you for your time. So if there's any questions, please feel free to answer them, ask them right now. So here's the practice and optional assignment for you guys. When you have time to complete the web gauntlet challenge using the methods we have, when you have time, complete the web gauntlet challenge using the methods we discussed in class today. So try crafting SQL queries. I've also provided a solution for the web gauntlet challenge that does a walkthrough, and there's multiple videos now. You saw that Professor Martin also has a video up on that, and Cyber Mentor also has a video up on that. So there's multiple ways, and I'm sure that they both will solve the challenge in a different way. I solved the challenge in a very different way than the Cyber Mentor. And when I saw the solution they presented, I was really shocked because it was so creative. So when you get stuck, then go watch the video and it'll help you practice more. And then again, for the JOT scratchpad problem, try using Hashcat to crack the JOT token. So that's your assignment, and that's it for me. And we'll see you guys next week for Cryptography 201. And we can answer questions if you have any. What if our Google Chrome can't load the web page? I tried to click the challenge, but I can't open it. Are you using, it might be blocked on your network. That's the only thing I can think of, where you might have something disabled that's not allowing you to open the challenge. Maybe try using another browser like Firefox and see if that works. If it doesn't work, then it might be getting blocked on the network, like on your network. So what challenge is that? Let's see. It's this challenge. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure why it's not able to open up in your computer. It might be blocked on your network. I'm not sure what the links will be available on the resource hub. I'll copy and paste them again. All of these links will be available on the resource hub as well. Let me know if that works. But yeah, if you guys don't have any other questions, feel free to leave and have a great evening. Thank you so much for joining us for Web Security 201. Again, a reminder for the teachers, supervisors, parents, guardians that we have office hours. So if you have any concerns, please feel free to come to the office hours. You should all have them in your calendar invites. They take place Tuesdays, 7 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Thursdays, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thanks again, everyone,